If you don't take this seriously, and if you don't talk about what the core values of the party are, that you believe in things like prisons, that you believe in things like illegals who are here who commit crimes have got to get out, we have no shot at taking those states. And I would pay attention to that because I want the states.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Grab a seat, because this discussion gets interesting almost immediately. Today's debate comes from a Fox News roundtable, where Jessica Tarlov finds herself outnumbered as she goes back and forth with Kennedy, Greg Gutfeld, and the rest of the panel over the future of the Democratic Party. The conversation quickly expands beyond one politician and into a bigger question. Who is actually shaping the next chapter of Democratic politics? The panel debates Vice President Kamala Harris's political positioning, the rise of younger progressive candidates, and whether this new generation represents a lasting movement or simply a moment in the political spotlight. Listen closely. This is the tell. The most revealing political debates often happen when the conversation shifts from personalities to power. It's one thing to argue about individual politicians. It's another to ask who influences a party's direction, whose ideas resonate with voters, and what vision is most likely to shape future elections. Here's what that really exposes. Healthy democracies are constantly evolving. Political parties don't stand still. They compete, adapt, and sometimes struggle internally over their identity. Those debates aren't signs of weakness. They're part of how democratic systems test new ideas and respond to changing public priorities. And this is where democracy meets accountability. As you watch this exchange, pay attention to whether the panel focuses on policy, electoral strategy, or personality. Those are very different conversations, and they often reveal different assumptions about what motivates voters. The strongest arguments usually connect political messaging back to real issues affecting people's lives, rather than relying solely on labels or partisan talking points. Stay with me until the end, because this discussion becomes about much more than one election cycle. It's really about where the Democratic Party is headed, how political coalitions change over time, and what those shifts could mean for American politics going forward. Before we jump in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I always enjoy seeing viewers from across the country and around the world joining these conversations. Now let's get into it.
I want to talk a little bit about Kamala, because I think this is very interesting. It's also a very predictable pivot for her, because she doesn't really have any political instinct. So what she's doing is she's trying to appeal to the cool kids, because she's already offended the adults in the room, meaning the Democrat establishment and all of the donors. So they're put off by her. They don't want her to run again because they sunk $1 billion into her truncated campaign with losing results. And, you know, she ebbed more support over the 7 weeks that she was running against President Trump than she gained. So what did she do in 2024? This is very interesting, and this is why the progressives hate her. She ran against her record in 2020, which was much more progressive. So back then, she was one of the first people to raise her hand and hump Bernie Sanders' leg in favor of Medicare for all. But then in 2024, she had to try and sound like an adult. And what she did was she made herself poison to progressives. So now she's trying to cozy up to them again. And the problem for her is she looks like an old person. It looks like me trying to use Gen Z slang to my daughters, you know, running around making breakfast going, no cap, you know. Idiotic things that just signal to them that politically she is past her prime. And if they're going to go for a DEI progressive, they're going to go right to AOC, because guess what? She resonates with the great overeducated, unwashed people that DSA activists are. They're the ones that they are going after. They are the ones that the DSA looks at demographics and goes, okay, a bunch of overeducated, unemployed white people. Great. We're going to primary a perfectly good Democrat there and throw them overboard. Kamala Harris does not appeal to those voters at all. And unfortunately for the Democrat Party, they have ceded so much in their hatred for Trump. They have given up on policy, and now this hollowed out shell is what they're left with, and the progressives will never see that as cool.
Jessica, I haven't seen a wait-and-see approach from the party. I see the same talking points being parroted throughout the party, throughout mainstream media of this is a big tent and we're all inclusive. And frankly, I think the whole point is anything goes. Any tattoo will be acceptable as long as you say first that you're going to vote Democrat.
So I think with the exception of Daria Lisa, generally speaking, the Big Ten has applied. People have spoken out about that, said things like, we believe in prison for murderers, or that you should deport someone who came here and violated American criminal law. But in general, yes, the attitude has been the tent is expanding. And I think that's due to the fact that the races that these DSA candidates are winning are in deep blue districts. So you have a district that's like D plus 50. You're essentially turning it from blue to, Rahm Emanuel said, to cobalt blue, right? So once they start picking off moderates, once they start winning in swing districts, which is what happened during the Tea Party, then I think you're going to have a very different attitude about this. There are a few Democrats who are part of a new coalition. Tom Suozzi is one of the leaders of it, speaking out about this overtly. But I think everyone else is taking a wait and see to see how this actually affects them electorally. Because everyone is thinking about 218. That's the number we have to get to. And the road to 218 runs through Kate Conley in New York 17, Bob Brooks, Paige Cognetti. It does not run through Milot Kiros in Denver. There was a progressive woman who was there, and now there's an even more progressive woman. I would caution people like a Kamala or Gavin Newsom in courting the DSA completely, though, because you can end up with egg on your face. You could end up like Scott Wiener, right? An incredibly progressive guy.
Is that egg on his face or something else?
Don't be gross.
Wondering what do you eat for breakfast?
Someone who has an incredible record on LGBTQ plus issues.
It's not.
Doesn't matter.
It is horrifying.
Unless you hate Israel, it does not matter.
But that's my point. Why won't you let me say it?
Blue in the Palestine flag.
But that's what I'm saying. That the guy changed his position, started calling it a genocide in January, and they still came after him with what appears to be blatant anti-Semitism. I want to talk about the New York Times Siena poll very quickly. All the battleground Senate seats, Alaska, Ohio, North Carolina, Texas, Iowa. In only one of them, in Maine, does the electorate think that the Democrats aren't too far to the left. In a majority of those districts, they see the party already as too extreme. So if you don't take this seriously, and if you don't talk about what the core values of the party are, that you believe in things like prisons, that you believe in things like illegals who are here who commit crimes have got to get out, we have no shot at taking those states. And I would pay attention to that because I want the states.
Is Obama to blame? Because he was the first one to go get glad happy with Mom Donnie.
You need to be specific on what we're blaming him for.
Because he went and did a photo op with Mom Donnie.
No, look,
paving the way.
Here's the way I'm looking at this, at the makeup of these hyper-educated white elites, and you hear phrases like socialist and Marxist and anarchist at the same time, and we're always thinking about the economic consequences of it, but what about the social consequences of these positions, of these groups? It's about trust. And it erodes trust because they see all human interaction as a relationship of power. One person is always trying to exploit the other, victimizer. They rarely, do you notice with these socialists, they rarely talk about corruption at all. It's of no interest to them because that's a tool to undermine the system of capitalism. So they're okay with what happens with USAID. They will condemn your paycheck, but they won't say it's illegal. They will do it in a moral sense. They will say it's greed. But corruption, they're fine with it. Think about all the Marxist and socialist countries in history. Corruption was rife. It's how you get rich in a stagnant or dead economy. So what you're going to see is a battle between trust and corruption. They will go after people who get wealthy the old-fashioned way, who start a business. You are the villain. It's why these candidates have no interest in actual commerce. Like you said, they couldn't run a popsicle stand, but they don't need to. They get into power in order for wealth since their previous career path didn't work out that way and they're in debt. So now I'm going to go off topic here a little bit, but I want to make a point. Think about what Trump did to D.C. When he decided to clean up the city. He brought in the Guard to stop crime, restored monuments and pools. What was he really trying to do? He was trying to restore the city as a high-trust environment. You shouldn't have to go to D.C. and look over your shoulder. The left didn't like that because they function better in a low-trust world. They create groups and programs to sustain that. They don't care about the corruption that's been uncovered by Doge or Nick Shirley, the billions. They would rather attack capitalism where the corruption doesn't even come close. I mean, if Amazon were USAID, it would be out of business instead of being like the most trusted company in the world. So the scariest part for me, as our society becomes less trustful, they want to dismantle what's necessary to maintain that trust. Law and order. So instead of arresting shoplifters, you just lock up the toothpaste. That make any sense?
It did.
Total sense.
It did. Good. I'm going to take a break. I'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Now here's where I think the conversation takes a turn. The moment it shifts from talking about actual policies to broad lectures about socialism and human nature, the debate starts moving away from evidence and toward ideology. Greg argues that progressives see every human interaction as a struggle for power. But here's what that really exposes. Many of the people talking about power aren't the ones sitting at the top of society. They're renters trying to keep up with rising housing costs, workers juggling multiple jobs, families worried about healthcare, or young people carrying student debt. Recognizing that wealth and political influence shape outcomes isn't the same thing as believing everything is a conspiracy. It's acknowledging that power exists and asking how it should be held accountable. Then Greg pivots to history, arguing that corruption has followed Marxist and socialist governments. Corruption has certainly been a serious problem in many governments throughout history. But here's the question that often gets left out. Is corruption unique to one ideology? History suggests otherwise. Monarchies, dictatorships, colonial empires, authoritarian regimes, and democratic governments have all experienced corruption when institutions lack transparency and accountability. The common thread isn't simply ideology. It's what happens when power becomes concentrated without effective checks and balances. That's one of the central lessons democratic systems are designed to address. Listen closely, because this is the tell. Greg then points to Amazon as an example of trust and efficiency. But that's an interesting comparison. Large companies can be remarkably efficient while still raising legitimate questions about market power, consumer privacy, labor practices, or competition. Those debates aren't attacks on business. They're questions about accountability. In a healthy democracy, asking who holds power, whether it's government or corporations, isn't something to dismiss. It's something citizens should be encouraged to examine. And then comes the line about locking up the toothpaste instead of arresting shoplifters. It's a memorable soundbite, but it also narrows a complicated issue into a single response. Public safety matters. Businesses deserve protection. At the same time, many people argue that long-term solutions also require addressing economic pressures, addiction, mental health, and community investment. Those ideas aren't mutually exclusive. A society can support law enforcement while also asking why certain problems continue to grow in the first place. Here's why Jessica Tarlov's role on the panel stood out to me. While much of the discussion leaned toward punchlines and ideological framing, she repeatedly tried to bring the conversation back to elections, districts, public opinion, and the practical realities voters face. Whether you agree with every point she made or not, that's where democratic debate is usually strongest, when it focuses on evidence, policy outcomes, and the people affected, rather than simply scoring rhetorical points. Because at the end of the day, democracy works best when arguments are tested with facts, challenged with evidence, and measured by whether they improve people's lives, not by who delivers the sharpest one-liner. So what do you think? Did Jessica Tarlov make the stronger case, or do you think Greg Gutfeld's arguments held up? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.